Okay, third graders, so we are going to look at task 3 from your capstone project. Elizabeth leads the way, looking at text evidence statements. So we've already built background, learning about being a good citizen, and about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And then we've already read the story once of Elizabeth Stanton. We're going to start by reading the story again, and I'm going to do a read aloud for you on the computer, done by somebody else. So we're going to listen to the story again, and then talk about our notes that we've already taken before, and then we're going to talk a little bit about text evidence statements and what that means. Okay, so let me start with our read aloud of our story. So go ahead and get comfy. Make sure you're listening to the story as we read, because this one won't be pausing like I typically do to ask you questions. It's just a full read aloud of the story, but I want to do it because I want the story fresh in your mind. Okay?
Elizabeth leads the way. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the right to vote. What would you do if someone told you you can't be what you want to be because you are a girl? What would you do if someone told you your vote doesn't count? Your voice doesn't matter because you are a girl? Would you ask why? Would you talk back? Would you fight for your rights? Elizabeth did. All of these things used to be true back when Elizabeth Cady was a girl, and all of these things might still be true today if Elizabeth hadn't led the way. She was only 4 years old the first time she heard a woman say life was better for boys. The woman had come to visit Elizabeth's new babysitter. What a pity it is she's a girl. How could anyone look at a little baby and feel sad? What would be wrong about being a girl? She was 13 years old when her father, Judge Cady, told a woman whose husband had died that the farm she had spent her whole life working on would be taken from her. Without a husband, the law stated, nothing belonged to her. Elizabeth was horrified by this unfairness. She said that the law should be cut out of every book. Judge Cady told her that wouldn't change anything. Preposterous. The law was still the law, and only men were allowed to change laws. She decided right then and there that she could do anything any boy could do. She jumped over high hurdles on horseback. She rafted across the raging rivers. She won a prize for being the best in Greek studies. Her father was proud, but he worried about his strong-spirited, rule-breaking daughter. Ah, you should have been a boy. He knew how much easier her life would be, but Elizabeth wasn't interested in easy. At 16, since colleges would not let girls in, Elizabeth begged her father to send her to a girls' school to continue her learning. So while most young ladies were getting married, washing dishes, doing laundry, and having babies, Elizabeth was studying religion, math, science, French, and writing. Several years later, Elizabeth Cady met Henry Stanton. He was an abolitionist, speaking out against slavery. He understood how unfair it was for people not to have rights or power. He did not laugh when Elizabeth talked about freedom. He did not laugh when Elizabeth said all people should be able to live life the way they chose. And he did not laugh when she told him she would add his name to her own, but she would not give up hers just to marry him. So Elizabeth Cady became Elizabeth Cady Stanton and had babies, cooked meals, washed dishes, mended clothes, and did laundry. She loved her babies, but she did not love cooking and dishes and mending the laundry. One day her friend Lucreta Mott invited her to a lunch. Lucreta had always shared Elizabeth's ideals about all the things women could do and would do if only they had the right. The other women at lunch shared them too. Elizabeth got fired up. She proposed they hold a meeting that would gather together lots and lots of women from all around to talk. But what would they talk about? There were so many things they needed to be set straight. That was it. That was the one thing that could change everything. If women could vote, they could help change all kinds of laws. This idea was so shocking, so huge, so daring. Elizabeth's friends gasped out loud. If they were flabbergasted, what would other people think? Elizabeth did not waver. She knew voting was the only way to make a difference. Her battle cry for the right to vote rang out. Have it, we must. Use it, we will. Even her Henry thought she had gone too far. But on July 19th, 1848, when Elizabeth arrived at the meeting place, she saw herself that she didn't. The small church in Seneca Falls, New York, was filled with hundreds of people. Elizabeth read aloud what she and a few of the women had written together. Their declarations of rights and sentiments challenged the ideal from the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. When she finished, she looked into the faces of the crowd and waited. The room was silent. Then a rumbling began. It grew louder and louder and louder as people argued whether or not women should be allowed to vote.
Hey everyone, I'm Mrs.
Word of the meeting spread like a wildfire. Newspapers across the country scolded Elizabeth for her boldness, but other women joined her in battle. The idea of women having the right to vote began to buzz in the ears of people from Maine to California. Elizabeth had tossed a stone in the water, and the ripples grew wider and wider and wider. Many said Elizabeth must be stopped, but she was unstoppable. She changed America forever.
Okay, so what I would like you to do now is think about the events in this story, okay? Pause this video, go back and talk about the events of the story a little bit, and also go back and look at all the notes we've taken on the other women in history who have helped fight for women's rights from the other stories we read in this Capstone project, along with the things that you've just learned about Elizabeth Stanton. Okay, so pause this video for a few minutes, go back and review those notes, add to them if you can, and talk about the story. And then we're going to go on to learn a little bit about text evidence statements and how to do those. Okay? Okay, so now that you reviewed the story and it's fresh in your mind, we are going to be completing the text evidence statements organizer that's in your packet. It looks like this. Okay, it starts on this, and there's a few on the next page also, okay? So before we do that, I want us to talk a little bit about text evidence statements and maybe kind of do the first one together a little bit. So I'm gonna share a video with you, and the video I'm sharing is just on the top, this page in your packet. There's a QR code up here. You can scan with the camera on your smartphone or tablet, and the video will come up. So that's just the one I'm going to share with you. So if you're working on your text evidence statements, and this process, or really anyone, you can always refer back to that using that QR code. Okay, so that's where I'm getting that QR code from. So let me bring that up. Okay, so again, go ahead and listen. And she's going to go through evidence statements, what they are, a little bit more directions.
Hey everyone, I'm Mrs. Bowen, a third grade teacher in the Capital School District, and I'm just here to help provide a little assistance if you need with the text evidence statement graphic organizer for the story Elizabeth Leads the Way. If you've never used a text evidence graphic organizer before, I'm just going to kind of share a little bit about how that works. So when you're using a text evidence graphic organizer, you are going to look at the evidence statement. That is a statement that has been provided on the graphic organizer right here under the evidence statement. Now, this statement could be true or it could be false. It could be a true statement from the story, or it could be just a statement that did not happen or occur in the story. So what you're going to do is you're going to read the evidence statement. This one says women could change unfair laws. If you feel that there is evidence to support that statement, so you know that you read somewhere in the story that women could change the unfair laws, and you know that that statement is to be true, you're going to write the text evidence for that in this section. Now, how we write the text evidence is we make sure that we're using those text evidence sentence starters to cite text evidence correctly. So on page 48, it said, or the author said, or using quotations right from the story. Any piece of evidence that you can use, make sure you're using those text evidence sentence starters to show that you have found evidence to support or prove this statement to be true. If you feel that this statement is false, if you feel that this statement is wrong, then you're going to find some evidence that proves that to be false. It's like you're being a little detective here, and you're going to find the evidence against this statement. So if women could change unfair laws, and you're going to say, oh no, that's not what the author said, or that's not what happened in the story, you're going to find the evidence against that statement, and you're going to write it there. Again, citing your text evidence appropriately. Now, sometimes the evidence statement could have evidence for and against. Those make you think a little bit more deeply and really make you start to think, especially if something happened in the story that changed an event. So maybe women could not change unfair laws at the beginning of the story, but then maybe there was a way that they could at the end of the story. So here that statement might have some evidence for that statement and have evidence against that statement. That could also be true if you feel that the statement is an opinion. So if you feel like you agree with that statement, more of a personal opinion, you're going to find some evidence to support your opinion. If you feel that this statement, you disagree with that statement, then you're going to find the evidence in the story that helped you come up with that conclusion that you disagree with that statement. So sometimes it can have both. Sometimes it can be argued either way, depending on the text evidence that you use. And sometimes it is straightforward. There are no, it can be back and forth or both choices. For example, when we're talking about the genre of the story, that can't be an opinion and it doesn't change throughout the story. So it's either going to be that this statement is true or that this statement is false, and then make sure that you identify the evidence in the story that proves that statement, either true or false. So I hope that, let me put my mouse away here. I hope that that helps you better use the text evidence statements. And again, if you have any questions, you have tons of great third grade teachers that you can ask for help. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you.
Okay, friends. So I hope that helped you a little bit. So let's think about that in our organizer. All right. So if we're looking at the first one here, the text evidence statement here in the middle, okay, evidence statement that women could change unfair laws. So is that a true statement or is that a false statement? If we look back in our text, and I'm looking towards the beginning of the story, when Elizabeth was first outraged and upset about the laws. And I remember the lady in the story who lost her home, her farm, because her husband passed away. And because it belonged to her husband and not her, she lost everything. She didn't have a home to live in because it wasn't hers. Elizabeth was horrified because she said, that's not fair, okay? And she went to the judge. And the judge said he couldn't change anything. Nothing would change anything. And he said, the law is still the law. And only men were allowed to change laws. So that right there, think about your evidence statement. Women could change unfair laws. Is that true or is that false based on this part of the story? That would be false because the statement says only men were allowed to change laws. So you would write that right here. Only men would be allowed to change laws. And you want to put the page number if you have it. So this is on page 436 in your page. And your book is also numbered. So that'll help you too. So that provides that direct evidence. Okay. So far, I haven't found anything for that supports that. But if I do, I can always add that into the organizer later. Okay. So these are things that directly come from the story. And like she said, was it the genre of this story is historical fiction, that's one that may not change. So you have to look carefully at the different ones and provide that direct text evidence, okay? So when you're studying the text evidence, there's an organizer back here to help you also. The text says, the author wrote, according to the text, based on what I read, the illustration shows. So those are things that help you think of and find direct evidence. And as you're writing your statement of whether it's true or false, these are your starters you can use to help start that, okay? And as always, if you need help doing the text evidence, because I know it can be kind of tricky, reach out to your teachers, and also feel free to use this QR code and see if listening to the other third grade teacher explaining it to you again helps at all for you to better understand the text evidence part, okay? And that is all for phase 3. I'm sorry, task number 3. In phase 6, and let me just check here. All right, and then our next activity will be your final capstone project. And I will be with you on that in just a little bit. When you are ready, go to the next video. When you're done, my friends, don't forget to submit your work to your teachers, video, text, or drop it off at the school so we can grade it for you. All right? Have a great day, my friends.